run again. Okay. I wasn't necessarily sure that I would ever run again. That race came up with an open seat and I decided not to run for that seat, and really had no intentions of running for public office again. Then I was approached maybe 4 weeks before the qualifying deadline in March of 2024 for this position from a group of interested citizens that wanted me to run, because they felt that this seat, which covers all of Southeast Atlanta and a lot of very important parts of Atlanta, but basically up to the Buckhead line and then all the way to the airport, wanted me to run because they felt I could do a better job than what had been what the current commissioner was doing. I ran, I won, and so I am here now. I've been in office inaugurated since January 3rd. So I've had 3 Board of Commissioners meetings. So I am going to try to answer your questions to the best of my ability, but I will let you know that I am absolutely still learning the county myself. And I'll take any, questions that you have back and get them answered, or even which we do plan to have town halls and get a lot of information right from the departments that specialize in what they do. And I know that has not been something that has happened much in the past. So here with me is Maria Banjo. She is my chief of staff. She is the former chief of staff to B. Wynn, who was a state senator. She also she's an attorney as well. She also comes out of the magistrate court, and she has a ton of experience, both in the court systems, the jails, and just really reading and being able to do the research. And that's what I was looking for in a chief of staff, because we have so many issues to deal with in Fulton County that are very legal related. So Maria and I have been hitting the road. There isn't a day that we're not in 5 to 6 meetings, and just really trying to compile all the information we can, so that we can ourselves put together a working process for how we're going to go about, sort of dealing with the issues of the county.
Great. Well, I appreciate the background on that. And we're going to transition to having folks do Q&A in probably in about 10 minutes or so. But first wanted to give a chance that we got responses, I should say, from over 50 members of the group about what issues matter the most to them. And we turned that into a word cloud. The bigger the word, the more times it's mentioned. And so if you could just take a look at some of these words and think about, how can the county address some of these issues? And maybe which of these have the biggest potential for progress at the county level, in your view at this moment?
Sure. I think rather than look at a lot of those words and tell you what I could do in those areas, I'll just tell you what the county does do, because then I think you can better understand where the services of the county come from. And so the primary services that the county provides, which I think you had in a former slide, are public health. So that's our health and human services, which means all of the healthcare services. So you think about when Atlanta AMC closed, that is directly related to the services provided by the county. Now, how does the county figure out how to bring healthcare services to its constituents when there is a hospital closing? And so that's a #1 area. Mental health services are a part of that. Senior services are a part of that. Disability care is a part of that. HIV care is a part of that. All of the things that you think about when you think about healthcare services are a direct function of the county. So for example, I'll tell you that we are always talking about every week about what we're doing about getting a new hospital and how are we going to fill that gap with Atlanta Medical Center's closing, and not only Atlanta Medical Center on Boulevard, but on the Wellstar in on the south side, and many other hospitals that have closed. So it's not just a downtown issue that we're dealing with, and the overcrowding overcrowding we see at Grady and Emory and all the other places. So there's a lot of conversation about that. Now, of course, we would have to be in conversation with the city of Atlanta to talk about a new hospital somewhere, because Atlanta would be responsible for providing the property, right? We would be responsible for providing the services. So there couldn't be a time where we would ever think about a new hospital where it wouldn't have to be a partnership between the county and the city, because the county will identify the property, will allow wherever that property is going to be through permitting and all of that, and then it will be the county's responsibility to provide the services. Right now, we have a partnership with Grady, where we're building a 24/7 emergency department in Union City, which, of course, is south of I-20 and one of the cities that is part of Fulton County. It's going to be a 20,000 square foot facility with 16 bays. It'll have a helipad and full imaging and lab services, addressing the urgent need for emergency care after those recent hospital closures. And that construction is expected to start this fall, with the doors opening in 2026. So those are the kinds of things that the county is doing in the healthcare arena. To better understand the county, if you think about the state of Georgia, and then you think about the county under it, that's the next biggest entity, the counties, 159 counties. And then each of those counties have cities underneath them. And Fulton has 15 of those cities underneath them, with the biggest one being the city of Atlanta. Other ones include Johns Creek, Alpharetta, Palmetto, East Point, Hateville, College Park. Those are Johns Creek. Those are all of the not all, I didn't mention them all, but the ones that are included in the 15 cities. So when I say that Fulton County is providing services, I mean that we are responsible for those healthcare services in those 15 cities. And of course, Atlanta being the biggest one. So that's one area that's hugely health and human services. The next area are the courts and the jail. Is very important. We fund all of what it takes to run and operate the court systems. Every court, juvenile court, magistrate court, state court, superior court, all of the courts, probate court. And then of course there is the jail. And so we were in a major backlog of cases moving through the court system, which is why there was severe overcrowding in the jail during the COVID crisis and after. And I'm happy to report that after receiving a bunch of funds from the federal government during the Biden administration, which we called ORCA, called Project ORCA, just because of the whale that it was. That's what they exactly named it that for. That was a bunch of dollars that went towards bringing down that caseload so that there could be a lessening of the jail population by not having so many people in a backlog in the court system. And so the county, in 2021, the Board of Commissioners approved $75 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding to address what was an insurmountable backlog of about 148,000 criminal cases that accumulated during the pandemic shutdown. Of the original 148,000 case backlog, ORCA has succeeded in disposing of nearly 139,000 of them. And that has reduced our jail population. So right now, the court system is working at a great level, great efficiency, different from what it was during COVID and even post-COVID. So we're in a very good place. Those ORCA dollars came to an end. It was 3 years and they ended at the end of 2024. And so people have been moving off of those ORCA dollars and going back to working how they originally had. And then you have the problem that caused in the jail. And you've heard about all the deaths that have happened in the jail. And that caused an investigation into the jail by the Department of Justice. And then the Department of Justice found through an investigation and through negotiation with our county attorney that we were violating inmates' constitutional rights. And they did order a consent decree that we signed and was approved by the judge on January 6th, 2025. And we are now working through the requirements of that consent order in order to make the changes that are needed at the jail. In the meantime, the population at the jail has has lowered through many things, through the disposition of cases moving faster, unindicted cases, indicted cases, all of that, as well as utilizing our partner jail facilities, whether that's in Alpharetta, whether that's the Atlanta Detention Center, and any of those partners, and spreading out the inmates so that there is no overcrowding, and there is no overcrowding presently. So we are in the process of following the rules for the consent decree requirements of the consent decree. The very first one was to name a independent monitor who will come into the Fulton County Jail and create an implementation plan for dealing with the biggest issues that were raised in the consent decree. And we have identified a person. We have approved that person at the Board of Commissioners, and now it goes to the judge for approval. So we will soon have our monitor in place, and the monitor will be then be able to get the work done. So that's the courts and the jail.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on that?
Sure.
I want to connect, just thinking about the court system. Several of our people in our group were tossing around some articles about county politics prior to this conversation, and one that kept coming up for discussion was a WABE piece about a woman should be the homeowner, like the home should have passed down through her family, and she's stuck in a court system and is concerned about whether or not she's going to be eligible for the homestead exemption, as it is her primary residence. And I think what the article was getting to was that the slow process through the probate court was really creating challenges that, like, as all these delays were happening, that she was ending up potentially going to get stuck with an unaffordable tax bill. And I'm wondering, when the courts are moving too slowly, you're talking about how it was sped up on the addressing the jail side of it. When courts are moving slowly or not serving people, what are the actions the county can literally do in a situation like that to speed it up? I think housing you see pop up here is a big issue. That Southeast Atlanta, obviously, you know well that this is a center of gentrification in the city. Like, we're really concerned about preserving people who are legacy residents and have the same or more right to be staying in their neighborhoods than people that have bought in the last couple of years. So I think it's top of mind for us of how can we keeping legacy residents in their homes, and what can we do about the court system to try to help make sure that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand that there's many factors that cause a slowdown, and it's not always just the court system. A lot of times residents don't exactly understand what is needed in order to do the correct steps to put them in the position that would have that process go faster. And I heard about that issue, and we took it to our tax commissioner, and it is being handled. But there are a lot. When a person, when there is a legacy resident and then a family member comes to take over or go into that home, that person isn't automatically given the status of the legacy homeowner. So they don't just step into the legacy homeowner's shoes, so to speak. There are things that have to be done. So in order for that to happen, those steps have to happen, and they did not happen. So there's many things that prevent, whether it's not understanding the process, or having a sibling that won't sign something, or having many siblings that won't sign something, or whatever the situation is. The best time to deal with the situation like that is when the legacy homeowner has passed and the house is being passed to the next relative. It's important to start at that moment, because the homestead exemption doesn't automatically pass to the child or the person that's coming in the legacy residence place, nor does the protections that the tax commissioner has put in place on legacy residents. The tax commissioner will never put a lien on a legacy residence home. There's going to be no seniors that are going to lose their homes to taxes that are unpaid. They do not do it. And I asked that question directly. Are you taking homes from legacy residents? No. So there are all kinds of ways that those homes are protected under all different kinds of exemptions that we can go into much deeper, and we can set up a forum for legacy residents or interested parties that want to help legacy residents, and I can bring the tax commissioner to talk about it. But it is not at all the goal of the tax commissioner to put somebody's home, put a levy against somebody's home so that can then be sold off so that it can then go into foreclosure on a senior. That is not at all what they are trying to do. So they are addressing that WABE situation and helping her through the process. But there's no certain thing that the court system can do differently that it would go faster, because the court system is not ignoring the legacy homeowner. There are things that have just not been done that have to be done in order to preserve that legacy status on the property. And so that's what we're doing right now.
I wonder, is there any way that in the process of, whether it's the process of gathering a death certificate as a family member passes, that the county could be more proactive to help inform people? I worked in a school system for a long time and saw a lot of people get trapped in the paperwork process and not know about something until it was too late. Is there, in your view, is there any way that the county could be more proactive, knowing that this is an issue affecting kind of all parts of the city of Atlanta, and I'm sure the county?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be proactive in putting together, some sort of flow chart of, what can happen, or, some, like, here's step one, the minute your relative dies, okay, if you're an only child, or if you have 6 siblings, or if there's no will, or if they, what to file, if you're looking for that senior and or disability homestead, exemption, or if you need a payment plan, or if you need, like, whatever it is, I can put together sort of like a flow process that somebody that could be for legacy residents or seniors to understand what happens upon a certain, death or certain, action happening. And like I said, I also don't mind at all having any kind of follow-up conversation like this that is specific to a topic. And then we could bring, the tax commissioner and his team who could really explain directly and because this is what they do every day.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. Is there anything, I cut you off a little before, I apologize about that, but is there anything else from the kind of word cloud here that you'd like to speak to?
Let me see. I was looking here. I wanted to let you guys know that we passed our 2025 budget. It was one of the very first things that I had to do as a commissioner, which is really overwhelming to sort of look at a budget book for $989 million and vote on it immediately when you don't really have the hindsight as to, how it all operates. I did the best that I could, and I think we did a good job. We reserved money in our account for the expenses of the consent decree. And I think that was a very prudent thing for us to do. So that budget was passed in our second meeting. I'll tell you that we are working. I was at the Capitol today. We're working on, a couple of issues at the legislature that are important to Fulton County. We are there to talk about a couple of new judge positions in the Superior Court. We're talking about a new sort of situation between Fulton County Jail and the Atlanta Detention Center. That's part of the legislative package as well. And, other small things that are just important for how we do business every day. But I'm watching those and we'll see how it goes. Governor Kemp has a proposed budget for the state of Georgia, which also includes $25 million for a new academic building at Morehouse School of Medicine. That is an integral part of the Fulton County community, obviously, and my district, and also in healthcare. Morehouse School of Medicine is a partner in urgent care clinics that are going to be opening up across the south side of town in the years to come. So we want to continue strengthening what they can do as a partner inside, right inside of our district. So that's a little bit about what is happening there. The consent decree, the inmates, that as far as, I know this is important. A lot of people ask about homelessness and what role does Fulton County play in homelessness. And so I wanted to make sure that I got an answer straight from our county manager who deals with all of our funds and could tell me, exactly, I know that we help out, and if the mayor calls and says, there's a building here that is owned by Fulton County and we'd like to think about using it for our unhoused population, then obviously that's conversation, because any buildings that are available owned by the city or the county that can be used for that, that's going to be a conversation. But really more like, what are the dollars that we put forward towards homelessness? And the answer that I got is that, the city of Atlanta is largely responsible for 90% of the homeless population in Fulton County, due to the way the HUD funding flows. HUD money for homeless populations is funneled from HUD straight to the city of Atlanta. So we offer behavioral human services and those permanent supportive housing solutions. So for some of the services that we provide is our behavioral health permanent supportive housing is $1.2 million of the state and general revenue. In 2019, the Fulton County Department of Behavioral Health had partnered with Partners for Home, which is PFH, and the Atlanta Housing Authority to provide permanent housing solutions to individuals and those experiencing homelessness. The PSA program had 5 new properties added to its portfolio because of Fulton County. We ended the year with 11 properties and 180 units. Fulton County itself receives about $2.8 million from HUD for homeless services, for county homeless services inside of the city of Atlanta. And those funds covered coordinated intake. We use them to assess centers managed by the gateway contractor, the housing information systems, so supportive technology systems, planning grants, and to aid in the permanent supportive housing. So we do have some money that we shift right on over to the city of Atlanta, but 90% of the funding from HUD for homeless services that comes into Atlanta is given to the city of Atlanta.
Great. And Paul asked a question, a similar question on funding about kind of federal versus county versus city. So when we talk about the health spending in the county, the question was, and several people liked it, was to what extent is the county dependent on federal money for health spending?
Yeah,
the worry, Mo, is that some of these federal grants are being cut back, and we don't have a very good picture of that. And I wondered whether you have a sense of how much the county really gets federal funds to do a lot of their health programs.
Yes, millions and millions of dollars. It's a very big concern. 2 weeks ago, when we heard that all the funding was going to stop, we immediately did an analysis, and I can send this analysis to you guys. We did an analysis of how the county would be impacted by certain funds, and it was well over $100 million. One of the biggest programs that we have that would take a hit is the Ryan White HIV program, which is 100% fully federally funded. It employs 70 people, and it's a huge, we have an HIV clinic. We have all kinds of programs. We provide all kinds of services in that area, and we would essentially have to close that if the funding stopped. So we began immediately to figure out how we could figure out other funding sources if, in fact, when this stay is decided, and hopefully it will not be decided that he can stop the funding, we would be able to figure out how to move forward with many of these programs. But yes, it has affected us greatly.
I think it's very important that the community know what the actual local impacts of all the craziness that's coming out of Washington is right now.
Yeah,
and therefore we can respond better to our congressional leaders or others that we know to try to stop the mess.
Yeah, I will send that report of the areas that would be most impacted in Fulton County from the federal cuts as we see it, and I'll ask our county manager if he's updated it since sort of that crisis day that we had where we were wondering what we were going to do. But I'll definitely get that to you in a follow-up.
Good.
All right. At this point, and Nathan Club is joined as well. He's going to help kind of elevate things in the chat and some of the questions that were submitted in advance.
Sure.
But I think we'll transition to, and I'll take screen share off. so we can see each other a little bit better.
Okay.
And we're going to transition to calling on some folks who submitted questions in advance, and then as questions come up in the chat, I'll kind of monitor and try to elevate, particularly if it's getting a lot of thumbs up or likes, that'll make it easier to know that's something that a large number of us are wanting to hear. And so, Crystal, I'm going to pass it over to you for a first question.
Okay, hi, Commissioner. 2 quick questions. The first one, kind of piggybacking on the Health and Human Services. What can be done to kind of ensure coordination between city support services like PAD and the county health resources that are available, like mental health clinics, what have you, so that the city isn't doubling up on the efforts that fall under the county's health and human services responsibilities. I think there've been city council discussions about the amount spent on PAD, and maybe some more coordination will help bring individuals who have needs to the county's health and human services resources. And then the second question is, what concrete steps can you take to ensure that renters get equal tax breaks to owner-occupied properties, so we can make sure that renters can also afford to stay in the city?
Okay. I think that question of how can the city and the county work together better to not double efforts. I wish I had the answer to that question, how the city and the county could work better together. I think that the city and the county try in the best way that they can to utilize the resources of the county and the resources of the city. But I think anybody would say that neither one has enough of the resources. So I think that nobody would say that there's the county paying for something and then the city comes on top and pays for it again. It's not that way. They would just say that the county put some money in and the city put some money in and we still don't have enough money. That's the way it really always comes up. It doesn't really ever come up that like the county shouldn't give in to that because the city already has enough money in it. It's always a question of how can we get the county to participate so we can have more money, or how can we get the city to participate so we can have more money. So I'm hoping I have made it a huge part of my relationship management to try to create a better relationship between the city and the county in terms of understanding things that are happening. We don't always know something that's happening in the city. The city doesn't necessarily, would probably say that they don't necessarily know something that's happening in the county. So it's really a matter of better communication. It's really a matter of people being willing to talk openly about something that's happening before it's happened. So that there can be input from both the county and the city together. But in the area of activities like PAD and homelessness and health services, I feel like there is a lot of conversation going on between both entities to make sure that they are doing what they can together. But there's also a lot of constraints on how funding happens and how budgets are done. And it's not just so easy for the county to go, oh, well, we'll send over 20,000 or we'll send over 10, and that's just a very small number, but because it's just not sort of how it's done. And I'm learning that you have to get into those conversations at a very early point to be able to sort of have some impact on how the dollars are going to flow. So I'm trying to get into those conversations right now for those budgets that are going to be happening in 2026, because the budget allocations for 2025 have already been set.
Well, I think in some of the conversations between the county and PAD, maybe discussions of making sure that PAD is taking folks to the behavioral health centers and the different resources that are available. There may also be just a communications thing and making
Well,
sure
Crystal,
they
if you
have
know if you know more about that and want to get in, give me an understanding of that a little bit deeper than what it is, I'd love to follow up with you on that, so that I think more specifically about what you're talking about, and if there's actual people that we can name to each other and that I can have conversations with. I don't mind having that at all. So I put my email and my phone number at the top of the chat. Please follow up with me and we'll talk about that specifically.
Okay. And the second
Okay.
one was just the renters, owner occupied properties get tax breaks, but renters do not, and that's a, you know, is difficult population in terms of like legacy residents, keeping renters, having the ability to maintain their being able to live in the city long enough to be eventual property owners.
Yeah, I think that that's an affordability issue, that, comes with, I don't know that our, tax commissioner is working on anything to address renters. Because that's not where the base of our tax revenue comes from. So that's not really an issue that the tax commissioner would take up, or that I think the county, I'm being honest, that the county would take up advocating for renters, because that is really seen as an affordability issue and lies with the city and the affordability of living in our city.
Follow up to that, Commissioner Ivory, that a few people have talked in the group about just about commercial property assessment. Obviously, that you know, there's lots of different types of commercial property, but there's I think a particular concern that some of the highest value properties in really prime locations over the years have not been assessed appropriately. And I was just wondering to what extent that's come across your desk in this work so far, and if there's any actions that you see in the future on it.
Yeah, it hasn't yet. I have not had an opportunity, both because of both of our scheduling, to meet with the tax assessor as of yet. We've been passing the budget, we've been dealing with the consent decree, and then we have been dealing, we just recently opted into the floating homestead exemption, and much of our meeting this past week was about setting our estimated rollback rate and really talking about with our tax commissioner about how this is going to affect our residents. So we haven't talked about commercial tax assessment as of yet, but just as a side, on my development authority appointee will not end his term until 2027. So I will not have the ability to appoint anybody to the Fulton County Development Authority, develop Fulton, until 2028. So in terms of the way that we're dealing with developers, the way that we're dealing with, you know, commercial property in Fulton County, I am going to be stuck with my predecessor's appointee. And that person is Kyle Lamont. We also know that Kwanzaa Hall was named as the chair of the Fulton County Development Authority just several months ago. I know that this is a huge issue. I remember even during the campaign that this is a huge issue, and I know that there, I don't know that I ever got that document that was one that was given to my predecessor where there were like a bunch of questions that you wanted answered from the tax assessor, but I would love to get that document so that when I do sit down with him, which I think we have a meeting set for the first week in March, I think, that we can go ahead and ask him all those relevant questions and do the same thing that, you know, I want to do for you for the legacy residents, a flow chart of, you know, like how it happens, where are the problem areas, where do we think we can see some improvement, why is it done this way? I've gotten when I ask a lot of the taxing questions, I do get an answer primarily that this is through the authority of the state, the way that the state has put the formula together. I mean, there's a lot of very vague answers. So I'm looking forward to sitting with the tax assessor and being able to bring you some real answers on why commercial properties are assessed differently.
Well, I think the county attorney has something to say about that too, because there was a close vote about a year or so ago that was going to look at the legal issues behind the leasehold interest that the county board of county development authority has, and he ruled that somehow mysteriously the county development authority still has some kind of mysterious leasehold interest, even though when the property is sold, they don't ever get the benefits from that. So there's some complex kind of legal argument there about the leasehold interest in these buildings. So the county attorney should, you know, need to be talked about that.
Okay, and maybe she'll be the person that'll give me the documents that I need to answer that correctly. Her name is Sujo, so I'll definitely, we put a note down there to get with her on that.
Good.
I also really appreciate how, from a communication standpoint, you're talking about putting out flow charts to help people process these complex things and processes. I definitely see a role of kind of groups like ours, probably NPUs and others to try to get that out and get those out to the people that can most need it as well.
Yeah.
So that is much appreciated. I want to pass it to Rachel, Ezo, and then Ryan after that. So representatives from speaking on probably on their personal behalf, but who have really important roles in local nonprofits. And so
Sure.
Rachel, we'll go to you first.
Mo, it's nice to see you.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. So I live in Ormwood, but I also in the work at Whiteford. And I know we've had a chance to chat before, but you know, Whiteford, like a lot of nonprofits, is really facing difficult situations with the federal funding. Whiteford has an early education program. And we serve a lot of families who get assistance from CAPS, and CAPS has issues with federal funding to pass downs, things like that. But we also have a federally qualified healthcare center. And I know you spoke earlier about, the gap in care with the closing of the Atlanta Medical Center and things like that. But there are nonprofits who are serving, and helping provide safety nets and gaps in these areas, and they're really facing dangerous situations with funding. And so I think a lot of us are trying to look to the county for guidance. I've spent some time looking at like the community grants and things like that, but county's website is not user friendly, and a lot of these nonprofits, we don't all have big staffs. And so I think we're all looking for ways to try to engage with the county that's meaningful, and also productive, because we're going to need some help. And we are providing critical services to many of our neighbors, and many who are very underserved as it is. So, I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit, or if you also maybe could, offer some suggestions or advice on how to engage with the county in a better way for that assistance, and making sure that people know kind of what's happening.
Sure. Well, the county is redoing their website, right? Is in the process of redoing their website. You wouldn't believe how long a technology request takes there, but I've heard it's been a long time, and they finally are going to be redoing the website. In terms of engaging with the county, I mean, I can be your tool for engaging. I mean, you should just, we should talk offline, and you let me know, like, what are the questions that you need answered? Who do you need to meet with? Like, what do you need? If you're asking for funding sources, I'll tell you that's like, I couldn't tell you today what the funding sources are. The budget is what it is right now for 2025. So finding extra funding sources for what might happen because of our new federal government, I don't have the answer to that, and I don't know what the answer to that is. But I certainly am willing to put you in front of the people who could answer those questions, and maybe you just haven't met with the right people in the past, or maybe we can talk to each other and figure out who those right people are, and then we can get them into a meeting and you can get those questions answered.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a big piece of it. I think, again, nonprofits generally have, many of them have very small staff that are stretched very thin. And I think it's just going to be really important that the county is very proactive in this setting, because, like, I understand what you're saying about like the program they're saying could get cut by funding and things like that. But the reality is there's lots of nonprofits who are carrying out public service works that are also dealing with these same things. So I'll definitely reach out, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to engage in this way. But I just think, there is I know it's hard because there's like stuff happening everywhere, but I think it's going to be really important that county is like, very forward facing and available to people, because it's getting tight out there, and it's not, it's not looking good for a lot of people a lot of nonprofits are providing really important services to the citizens of Fulton County.
No, I understand. And it's really difficult because, you know, there is a bank account and it has but so much money in it, right? That's, I mean, just the simplest
Yeah.
way, you know, to put it. And you write checks out and, you know, this year, $1.7 million was cut out from arts and culture. And you wouldn't believe how many people showed up at the Board of Commissioners meeting, you know, very
Yeah.
upset about that 1.7. And I understood it completely. I'm a professor of arts and culture. So, I'm very disturbed about that too, but we have a consent decree that says we've been violating people's constitutional rights. So before we can fund arts and culture, we have to make sure we're you know, making sure that we are in adherence with providing a jail that is not unconstitutionally operating. So it's just priorities, and it's just very hard when you're not one of the priorities, but I totally understand. I totally understand.
Ryan?
Yeah, I don't want to be duplicative. So I will say this so that people on the call understand this. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm the executive director of East Atlanta Kids Club. We're one block across Moreland, so we technically are in DeKalb County, but the majority of our students are in Fulton. We kind of split between the two. I'm an Armwood Park resident. I'm on the Go Team at Parkside, and I'm on the board of the East Atlanta Business Association. We've received community services programming for 6 of the last 7 years, $192,000. We'll apply again. We're in the middle of a procurement period right now, so I'm not going to ask you any questions directly about it. Although it doesn't look like that funding has fared as poorly as arts and culture, particularly for your children, which is what we do. I think it's good for people on the call to know that Fulton County does fund programs in our community in really critical ways. That's like 5% of our budget in any given year. And as our least restrictive government source, you know, we have 4 government contracts last year, and our federal funding is gone. So we do appreciate that you exist there. You talked a little bit about how y'all work with the city. DeKalb County does a much poorer job of funding programs like ours, like a fractional amount of human services funding. Like, is there any insight, maybe we connect offline, that you might give me into like any of your colleagues or any of the ways y'all might influence they're giving on the other side of Moreland? Because it's
Wow.
I mean, because we serve like right on this line here, right?
Yeah.
And the spending is just like pitiful.
Yeah. I've not a clue what's happening in DeKalb since they have a new, you know, CEO. I do know Lorraine. We can, you know, try to figure out we know who runs our programs in Fulton, and we would certainly be glad to talk to them and see who their counterpart is. So if you don't already know, and see if we can't move anything forward there. But, you know, in terms of us having any influence on what happens in DeKalb, it's 0%.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, some of us work at the intersection of municipalities and counties and all these different governmental entities, and we're just really trying to figure out, to Rachel's point, how do we like stand up the most base social safety net?
Yeah, I mean, it is not a bad concept to think that like electeds from different areas could work together and, you know, be able to have cross connections. I am planning, which had never been done before, which I was pretty surprised about, of having just the Southeast Atlanta elected collective have a monthly or bi-monthly meeting, and I mean Nan and Jason and I and you know, whoever else needs to come, because we sometimes work in such of our silos that we don't even get a chance to really have conversations with each other to know what one is working on or how far they've come with it. And everybody has so many meetings that it's just not possible for us to be at all the meetings when they're talking about, you know, like today at the Capitol, I heard them talking about some Fulton stuff, and I didn't even know that there was a meeting. I was in the Capitol and I didn't even know that there was a meeting also going on about it. So we just have to do a better job of coordinating with each other to sort of work together as a group in a better way. And I think that if we did that, we might be able to, you know, then be able to have that same counterpart with other counties, which would be an amazing goal.
Mo, the next 20th of the next month, we're having all of our city council people. We've invited them all to a similar discussion. So we would invite you to join that meeting and see what they have to say also.
Okay, for sure.
All right, we have just 10 minutes left. Commissioner Ivory, she has to leave right at 6 for another community meeting, but I'm hoping to hear from Alira, Jimmy, Catherine, and Nancy. So if we get, well, that's ambitious, I know, but we'll pass to Alira now.
Okay, hi, thanks everyone. I'm Alira Lofton. I'm from Philly, but I live in Lakewood Heights. And I had two questions surrounding improving pedestrian infrastructure and then also the development of abandoned properties in the Lakewood Heights downtown area. So I wanted to know how do we determine like the role of the county versus the city as far as neighborhood infrastructure goes?
Yeah, so what are you, that right off the bat, I can tell you is the city. But
Okay.
what specific, if you're talking about sidewalks and roadways and all, that's definitely the city of Atlanta.
Okay. And then abandoned properties would be City of
Yeah,
Atlanta.
because that's code enforcement, which is the city of Atlanta code enforcement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We had, I think Catherine's question was, Catherine, if you're here and you want to come off mute, feel free to follow up here, but was about a blight tax that was passed back in 2005. I'm not personally familiar with it, but she was wondering about whether judges would enforce it. So I don't, Catherine, are you still on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the person before me mentioned, I live next to a boarded up property. I'm in Summerhill. And the goal, obviously, with the blight tax is to make it financially disincentivized to hold on to a property that's in bad shape and doesn't serve the neighbors well opportunistically. And when I've read through like the news about the blight tax, it's actually a law that enables judges, I'm not sure at which level, to actually enforce the blight tax, meaning they can go up to 25x of tax assessed value when taxing the property. So I am curious if you have any insight into whether judges are likely actually going to help with that, because
Yeah.
it seems like it's up to the judge.
Yeah, it will be up to the judge. I don't have any insight into that. I don't know if there's actually been any blight tax case filed as of yet. We can find that out. I'm not exactly sure where that would be. I'm thinking that would probably be in magistrate court. But we can certainly call a chief judge and find out, what happens if there's actually, there would have to be a violation, then there would have to be obviously the legislation at the city of Atlanta lays out what the steps are, right? They find that there has been a violation. They are going to serve notice on that violation. Then there is probably a cure period where the person can fix the situation. If they don't fix it, then they file for, something in, great, I see that. Thank you, Nathan. Then I see that in, and then you would see it in the court. So I don't know if the courts have actually gotten one of those cases yet, but I'll find out.
Okay, thank you. And is it the county level court because it's the county level tax commissioner?
Likely.
Okay, thanks, Mo.
You're welcome. How can we save all these links?
I can, what I can do is I'll save the chat, and then as a
Okay.
follow-up, I will email you the full
Okay,
copy.
perfect.
of that.
Okay, perfect.
Probably
Because
a-
I like to then assign out all of these things that I know that I want to get back to you.
And then we'll make sure to get it out to people too, kind
Okay.
of as in a summary. So thank you so much for your willingness to do the follow-up. I know that's the hard part.
Yeah, no problem.
Um,
No problem.
So thank you for it. Jimmy Hardy, I wanted to pass to you. I had a question about funding for senior, I think senior residences. If you're there, Jimmy, can you unmute? I see him here still. So his question, I'll just read his question if he's
Sure.
not unmuting. So he submitted, what budget funding do you support for Fulton County multi-purpose senior centers?
Sure. So we have funding. I don't know what the exact amount of the funding is. It's in the budget and I'll get that for you, but we have allocated funding for all of our senior centers. You know that Fulton County has one of the most robust senior centers, and our closest, largest senior center being Helene Mills over there in Old Fourth Ward is a priority center for us. And so we we have not taken any money out of the budget, even with the consent decree towards our senior centers, and our senior centers have the same full funding and more that they had in the last fiscal budget. So we continue to do that. We continue to have the transportation services program, the Uber program, all of the arts and culture activities, all of the food and medical services that are provided at all of our centers. They stay completely intact.
Thank you. And Nancy, if you want to unmute and ask your question, she had a question around elections. And if I see her here, but I'll just ask it, I think, for time actually as well.
Okay.
Nancy McCord submitted, what do you see as the positives of the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections in this last election cycle? What challenges do you see ahead? Sure, that's it.
Sure, we were given a 100% almost flawless execution of this past election in 2024. We did not have any major issues. Anytime an issue came up, it was addressed. All of our systems were working, and so everything was certified in a timely manner. So there were no real issues that came up in 2024. We have our new elections hub center in the south part of Atlanta, and it continues to operate at its full capacity. There will only be one election in Fulton County that will happen in 2025, and that is for the Public Service Commission. So you will see that election come up in 2025. And then, of course, in 2026, there will be staggered elections for Fulton County commissioners, and that will be a midterm election year. So we'll be in full swing. What are they doing in between time? Just making sure that they're dealing with all of the issues that come from the state on elections, any cases that they're in the middle of that have come down, making sure that they're following the state, the General Assembly right now as more election bills are being introduced. And so that's sort of what happens in a slower year. They're prepping themselves for the time when it will be a full election year again, which it will be in 2026.
I wonder if there's any workaround for homeless people who now are supposed to get their mail at the election center in South Fulton County. That's a state law that changed last year and now is, I guess, in effect. I think you basically have excluded homeless people from voting because they can't get any notice or any mail from is there any workaround to that?
I haven't, I can ask about that. Paul, I don't know. I have to ask about that. There's there's constantly a move in Atlanta to decrease voting rights and access. So it's very hard to know at any point what's going to happen. We'll see a sweeping view of a whole bunch of new bills that'll happen, and then we'll have to implement the things around that. But I had not heard about the mail issue with the homeless population, but I'll find out about it.
Thanks.
So are you saying that that the elections hub was supposed to have a mailbox that homeless people could use to have an address in order to vote?
No, they used to be able to put in a mailing box address or Central Health Center or
okay.
They used to be able to do that and get their election mail there. Now they can't. They can't mail it there. They can only go to the election center in South Fulton County to pick up their mail from the election department. So nobody's going to go there.
Right, exactly. So what could be the workaround for that? You may be like bringing it to Pryor Street. I mean, is that kind of like what you're thinking? Like if there was a way to bring it from South Fulton to some of the more populous areas and have a different drop-off point? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Maybe it could be a way that the county could let some nonprofits distribute the mail.
Okay, let's talk about that. I like that. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Commissioner Ivory, we have just probably 30 seconds left. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much for your time. Maria Banjo, it's great to see you as well. Thank you for joining us. And we look to keep this relationship going. And if you could close by just saying, when somebody notices something, they're curious about an action you've taken, or they have an idea, like something like Paul just shared. I know you shared your email and phone number. Is there anything that really helps you? And when a constituent reaches out, do you want them to provide information in a certain way? Questions like, how can we best communicate with you going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think stuff like this is great. I mean, and like I didn't know about, to be open to teaching me about something I might not know about is really the most important thing. I'm learning as much as you. And so if you just really keep in good communication with me and tell me like, oh, this happened, or, if you could put us in touch with the right person, or I don't know that you know about this. I mean, that's how I can get to something before it becomes like a huge, bigger problem, and then I don't know about it. So I just think this very thing that we're doing, sort of outside of the regular business that you have to do at your meetings. It's really hard at the neighborhood meetings and even at the NPU meetings to have like a conversation like this because there's so much business being taken care of the NPU. Like MPUW last night, it started at 7 o'clock, and at 11:15 they were still talking about the short-term rental ordinance. And I was probably like 9th down on the next things that were coming up. So I probably would have got a chance to introduce myself at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And like, I just couldn't stay on. So I really prefer like a setting like this where we could just have some good community conversation, and talk about things that are important to, representation. I mean, this is a local position. So I'm local to you guys. So if you want to meet at the Grant Park Coffee House or you want to go somewhere else and do it like this, I'm completely open.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And I know you got to go now, so we really appreciate it. And just for everyone who joined today, I'm really grateful for your time as well, staying engaged. I'm putting in the chat now. If you're not on our Facebook group already, we are up to 209 members on our Facebook group. So I would assume everybody here is on, but we're growing quite quickly. And want to thank, we had some representatives from Congresswoman Nikema Williams' office join today as well. I think getting to know our group here in Southeast Atlanta. So just thank you again to Commissioner Ivory and to everyone. And feel free to hang on. I'm going to hang around and chat with whoever wants to stick around, but sign off if you're ready to sign off, certainly. Okay.
Thanks, everybody. I look forward to seeing you soon. And
Thank
also
you.
I wanted to say congratulations to Paul Bolster, who I just appointed to the Library Foundation Board.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I know he'll do me proud. I know he will. Thanks, Paul. All right, everybody.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
So I was glad she announced that. I got appointed on Wednesday and just got the first emails. Go to my first meeting at the end of the month.
Congratulations, Paul. I know you wanted that.
So if you have things that you're interested in terms of how our library's doing, things they could do, maybe like Mo, I'll know a little bit more about it in the future, and I'd be glad to hear from you on it.
I think having information up, so if we can get her to follow through on those flow charts, like thinking about information, like things like how to protect a house that's in the family, like as and it's something like that, those kind of info charts she's talking about, I just feel like we need everywhere possible to get the word out about ways that people can access services.
Yeah.
Since nobody's talking, I'm always glad to talk. I'm working on an article on the effect of the CDC cuts in our neighborhood. And so if anybody has any connections to some CDCers, there are over 40 families who depend on their employment at the CDC that live in the Porch Press area. Well, more than that, probably. But I'd be glad to talk to them. And I had a conversation today, and it's sort of chilling.